Hello, thank everybody for attending. We'll get started in 2 minutes. Hello, and welcome to the Home ARP American Rescue Plan Housing Plus Support Program NOFA and Application Workshop. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be here and learn about the program. This program has been years in the making, and we're excited to share it with you today. Next slide, please. Before I get started, I would like to do some housekeeping. This meeting will be recorded and the PowerPoint will be available after the meeting. Closed captions will be provided in a box at the bottom of the center of the screen. Click the live transcript button and then click the show subtitles to view closed captioning. If you have technical difficulties, the first thing we recommend you do is to sign in and out of the meeting. Then, if that doesn't work, you can request help with the Q&A box. We have Home ARP staff available to assist. And if that doesn't work, we also are available at the Housing Plus Support email box, the HPSP at hcd.ca.gov. And so we can help. During the presentation, please send your questions to the speaker through the Q&A box, as the chat has been disabled for this webinar. The Home ARP team will answer questions throughout the presentations, and we will also have an opportunity to have verbal question and answer session at the end of the presentation. Next slide. We're going to cover a lot of information today, starting with introductions of the Division of Federal Financial Assistance Leadership. Without their support, we will not be here today. We would not be here today. I will also introduce the Housing Plus Support Program staff. These individuals were instrumental in developing the program. I will give a brief background on the Home ARP program, talk about the team's efforts, consultation efforts feedback that we received from the community to develop the program. And then the team will take you into the specifics, the program specifics. And we'll close out, as I mentioned before, with the question and answer session. I would like to acknowledge and thank Sasha Oswald. She is the FFA's Deputy Director, Willa Darley Chapin, Housing Branch Manager. And as I stated, without them championing this unique program here at HCD, we wouldn't be here today. My name is Jason Bradley, and I am the Home ARP Section Manager. I call this slide these individuals the brain trust of the Housing Plus support program. The team is headed up by Kelly Underwood with the support from Tammy, Jared, and Cheryl. Thank you. I'm going to give a little background on the program and our outreach. The Home ARP program was born out of the American Rescue Plan in 2021. Nationally, Congress made $5 billion available to reduce homelessness and increase housing stability. Of the $5 billion, HCD was allocated $155 million to serve non-entitlement areas in California. The Home ARP funding is intended to serve the most vulnerable Californians. Home ARP is a community-informed program. Prior to designing the program, Home ARP staff held several statewide listening sessions. We attended several conferences throughout the state because we wanted to know, what was the housing and service delivery gaps throughout the state and how this Home ARP funding can address those issues. In all, we received input from over 2,000 individuals who play a part in the homelessness response ecosystem. And overwhelmingly, we heard rental assistance and the appropriate supports to keep people housed was much needed in California. And so that's exactly what we put together. And you'll hear more about that today. So I want to talk about some important dates for the program. The notice of funding availability was released on January 23rd, 2024. That notice is available on the Home ARP website. And the application due date, we have until April 12th, 2024 to work with our non-tribal applicants to ensure that the program, that we have a competitive application. It is a competitive process, and we want to be available to you to make sure that you understand the program, the application requirements, and we anticipate our awards in July 2024. Now I'm going to pass it to Kelly. She's going to talk to you about the purpose, intention, and structure of the Home ARP Housing Plus Support Program. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. My name is Kelly Underwood, and I'm so excited that you guys are here to learn more about the program and the application process. Next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about what this program is and what this program is not. This is a Housing First rapid rehousing program. This program cannot be tied to a building. It has to follow the person. We're going to use evidence-based trauma-informed practices, housing case management, and housing navigation to meet participants where they are and support them through their housing stability. And we're going to provide supportive services for long-term success, meaning that we're going to provide education and budgeting, employment opportunity, support with employment opportunities and things like that, so that participants will not only be served financially through the program, but they will also receive those valuable services to help them maintain the success that they obtained during the program. Next slide, please. So we want to work with our nonprofits to obtain the case management, housing navigation, and provide time-limited rental assistance and supportive services to individuals and households who meet one or more of the definitions of our qualifying population. We will go into this a little bit further, but all of our qualified populations must be served. We cannot, have any programs running that eliminate or exclude any of our qualified populations. Next slide, please. All right, so our intention is to partner with our lead service providers, the nonprofits who are doing supportive services already in communities. We want to locate immediate housing solutions for our qualified populations, provide comprehensive housing case planning and support. And this is driven by the participant. So we don't have like a blank template that everyone's going to follow and, it's rubber stamped every single time. These housing case plans will be specific to what the participants' needs are and what their families' needs are. We're going to build case management capacity to ensure long-term permanent housing success. Next slide, please. So the vision and strategy. The vision is to connect our individuals and families who are participating in the program and experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness with permanent housing and supportive services needed to increase financial self-reliance and stay housed. So one thing about this program is it does not include temporary housing. We will need to work with our community partners that do have funding for temporary housing, for those gaps of time between program enrollment and permanent housing. This is a 5-year program where the goal is to ensure participants achieve housing stability and become financially stable prior to the end of the program. We're really looking to make sure that there is no return to services whenever possible. We want to take every step that we can to help make sure the participant and the household is stable before they exit the program. Next slide, please. So the structure. Again, we want to prioritize permanently housing people quickly. We want to coordinate temporary housing with our community partners and get those permanent housing solutions as quickly as possible. Again, this is a person-centered approach. The person is the beneficiary. The benefits and services follow the individual through their path to housing stability. This cannot be tied to a specific building. We need to make sure that we're following housing first, which allows participants to have the choice in where their housing is. Next slide, please. All right, funding and funding targets. Next slide, please. To ensure all of the eligible home ARP jurisdictions throughout the state have an equitable opportunity to apply for the funds, we will be implementing the following. The funding has been allocated to each region in California as well as a tribal target. Funding amounts are designed to cover the actual total program cost and administrative overhead to support the program over the 5-year service period. So I want to say that again. With this program, we anticipate that you will not have to braid funding in. There's no match requirement. This funding that we have allotted to the regions is set up to be able to fully fund the program for the 5-year. There is a minimum grant amount in a couple of regions. Some have more than one option, and we'll get to that a little bit further in the presentation. The minimum grant amounts support one housing case manager and a housing navigator, as well as rental assistance and other services provided through the program, all of the supportive services. And there's also a maximum of an additional 10% of the grant amount for administrative funding. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the presentation later on as well. Next slide, please. So here's the map of how the regions are broken up. The funding was decided using data and information available to us. I want to point out that on the left, there's a list of all of the counties. Please be sure to check the NOFA for what an eligible jurisdiction is, as not every single county is eligible. If a county received funds directly from the federal government for home ARP, then that area is not eligible for HPSP funding. Next slide, please. So here we have our targets. In the northern region, there are 3 options. And I want to clarify here that if a grantee selects during the application, or I'm sorry, if an applicant requests during the application process the maximum limit, say in Region 1 of 8,910,000, and there are multiple, quality high scoring applicants, then an applicant may be approved for the program, granted for the program, but it might be at a lower rate. So if you select the 8,910,000 and we end up with 3 equal applicants, then each applicant would probably end up with the 2.97 for that allocation. And as you can see, Region 3 also has 2 choices. Now, when we're looking at this funding, if it's the minimum funding, we're expecting 1 case manager and at least a part-time housing navigator to be funded through the program. As we go up, like Region 1, if it's the 8.9, that we anticipate would support 3 case managers and a full-time housing navigator. And we can answer any questions on this later in the Q&A section of the presentation. Next slide. So this goes more into detail about what I was just talking about, the 3 options. Depends on the size of the program and the ability to expend the funds. One thing we want to make sure we do is expend all of the funds by the end of the 5 years of the program. Any funds that are not expended will be returned to the federal government, and we would really like to keep those here in California to support the participants, that are very vulnerable in our communities. Next slide. And here we talk a little bit more about what Region 2 looks like, since it's the other one that has multiple choice. Thank you. Next slide. All right. Because this is a competitive application process, applicants who apply for more than the minimum funding amount in the region may be subject to only the minimum funding amount. We just really want to make sure we hit this and everybody understands that if there are multiple high scoring applicants applying in the region, you may only end up obtaining the minimum funding amount. Next slide. All right, and now I'm going to pass it over to Jared to talk about eligibility.
Thank you, Kelly, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Next slide, please. So the Home ARP Housing Plus Support Program eligibility, we are primarily partnering with nonprofit organizations or your 501c3s. And before I go any further, we do refer to nonprofits prior to applying for the program and being accepted as a subrecipient. So what you'll see in this this presentation, we will refer to nonprofits. And then once a organization is granted and we are going to work with this specific organization, we refer to them as subrecipient. Next slide, please. So HPSP prioritizes serving the qualified populations in California's non-entitlement jurisdictions. Applicants must demonstrate their service area has a meaningful presence in that state jurisdiction, Home ARP state jurisdiction. and a significant portion of their clientele originate in that specific home ARP jurisdiction. An applicant will be considered as having an eligible service area if their primary office is headquartered in that specific jurisdiction. They have one or more satellite offices located in that specific jurisdiction, and or their service area incorporates that specific home ARP jurisdiction, and they can demonstrate their ability to serve individuals and families living in those areas without creating any transportation barriers or any other barriers that create difficulty accessing services. Next slide, please. An eligible state home ARP jurisdiction is a locale that did not receive their home ARP allocation directly from HUD, is not a participant in an urban county agreement with a county that has received their home ARP allocation from HUD, and is not a participant in the home consortium. Subrecipients ensure all funded activities are available and targeted to eligible jurisdictions, home ARP jurisdictions, facilitate outreach to the qualified populations, and evaluate participation annually. Funded activities may also serve households located in the HPSP or home ARP entitlement areas in the event that the qualified population is placed into permanent housing or relocates to an HPSP entitlement area during their participation throughout this program. Next slide, please. So activities for the HPSP program, a lot of everyone here should be familiar with the McKinney-Vento supportive services and the homeless prevention services. And costs for the HPSP program, funds may be used to pay for eligible costs associated with the supportive services activity in accordance with the HUD Notice CPD 2110, which is also the home ARP notice. And the home ARP, my apologies, the Housing Plus Support Program admin activity costs up to 10% of the grant amount can be used for administrative costs. This 10% for administrative costs are things like the salary and wages and benefit costs of the subrecipient staff. Now, this refers to the case manager and housing navigator's supervisor, travel cost, admin services provided under the third-party contracts or agreements, including general legal services, accounting, and auditing services, and some of the other goods and services that this 10% admin funds can help with are things like rental, the rental or purchase of equipment, insurance, office space, and computers for your case manager. So it's really beneficial that that we're going to have this 10% admin costs for those type of things. Next slide, please. All right, let's talk about some of the allowable expenses. Of course, case management and housing navigation services are the cornerstone of this program and are really going to help participants achieve housing stability long-term. And some of the other things that HPSP will be able to help with are your security deposit, your first and last month's rent, application fees, utility deposits, general moving costs, transportation, and food. And I do believe another thing that makes this program very unique and special is that we can pay up to 6 months in back rent, or up to 6 months in and up to 6 months of past utility payments, if that is a barrier for a participant getting into housing. So that is something that we can do in this program. Next slide, please. Some of the available services that we will be utilizing through the HPSP program are some of your life skills training programs. We're going to have landlord and tenant liaison services, mental health services, outpatient SUDS, educational services, employment and job training, legal services like previously mentioned, and credit repair. While we do have a small amount of funding to help with some of these things, such as your substance abuse training, outpatient, and mental health, we do want to really utilize as many community resources as possible. But this is available through the HPSP program and also outlined in our NOFA. Next slide, please. All right, and I believe at this time we were going to take a short intermission. If you could give us about 5 minutes, we'll take a break for about 5 minutes. Thank you. All right, welcome back. Now I'm going to discuss some of the Housing Plus Support Programs program components. Next slide, please. All right. So some of the Housing Plus Support Programs qualified populations, as you can see here, we have our homeless population, our at-risk of homelessness population. We have our fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, and or human trafficking. Housed that have an annual income that is less than or equal to 30% AMI and is experiencing severe cost burden, or housed and have an annual income that is less than 50% AMI and meets one of the definitions and one of the conditions, I'm sorry, of the at-risk of homelessness population. And that is the Housing Plus Support Programs qualifying populations. Next slide, please. The role of the housing case manager, again, a cornerstone part of the Housing Plus Support Program. And their role is to complete intake and eligibility determination. And we want them to work with the participant to create a personalized housing case plan that best meets their needs, the participants' needs. Collaborate with the housing navigator to identify appropriate housing opportunities that best meet their needs. Support the participant in the housing search and placement. And we want to coordinate with community resources, referrals, and specific supportive services for them. Next slide, please. And when making a referral to a community partner, we want the housing case manager to discuss with the participant the reason for the referral and the services that the participant will be requesting and that may best meet their needs. And of course, we want them to obtain a release of information so that the case manager can discuss with the community partners the need of the participant. Follow the process for referring a participant to a specific program and or agency, and provide a warm handoff. We would like the case manager to create a collaborative meeting between the partnering agency, the case manager, and the participants, so that we can all get on the same page and there's no questions that may be unanswered. Follow up with the participant to ensure that they obtain the services they need, and that is vital because we want the participants and the case managers to help the participants get to housing stability long term. Next slide, please. All right, and thank you for your time, and I will pass the grant terms, milestone, and disbursements section. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Everyone can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Next slide. Okay, so for the Housing Plus Support Program, we have some grant terms and milestones. This is a 5-year term for the program. Applicants that are awarded funding will be required to meet expenditure milestones. As you can see on the chart here, the percentage of the funds that must be expended, 20%, excuse me, within a year after the execution of the contract, 40% by June 30th, 2026, 60% by June 30th, 2027, 80% by 2028, and 100% expended by June 30th, 2029. Next slide. So the disbursement and conditions for disbursement are made on a reimbursement basis. They're dispersed after the standard agreement has been fully executed and the general conditions within that standard agreement have been met. Recipients must submit a request for funds, and that will include all the supporting documentation. The reimbursement request must be made through our Neighborly software system, which we'll be going over a little bit later in the presentation. Funds awarded to an applicant may not be transferred to another entity to expend on an eligible supportive services activity unless that entity is also a signatory on the standard agreement. Next slide. Okay, I'm going to pass the baton back to Kelly to cover minimum requirements and scoring. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Next slide, please. So for the minimum requirements, the applicant must be eligible as described in the NOFAT. Proposed activities must be eligible pursuant to the NOFAT. Programs must be within a non-entitlement jurisdiction in the state of California. And I do want to add a little bit of clarification here. We are looking for a significant presence in non-entitlement jurisdictions. This could mean that you're headquartered in a non-entitlement jurisdiction or just outside of a non-entitlement jurisdiction, but you will serve the non-entitlement jurisdiction. I also want to clarify that if a participant comes to a subrecipient in a non-entitlement area and says that they are homeless within that area, and then later during the program finds housing outside of a non-entitlement area, maybe it's due to finding a job outside of the area, we will support the participant. As we mentioned before, this is a person-centric program, so the benefits will follow the participant within the state of California. Programs must serve all of the qualifying populations. We will not have any exclusion of any of our qualified populations. And of course, the program must comply with the Home Investment Partnership Program and the HUD notice for home ARP. Next slide, please. Programs must follow all applicable fair housing, civil rights, and non-discrimination requirements. This includes, but is not limited to, the Fair Housing Act, Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, HUD's Equal Access Rule, and the Americans with Disabilities as applicable. Programs must also comply with Housing First policies and the department's home ARP policies and procedures as well. Next slide, please. All right, so scoring. Next slide, please. So the total points available are 100, and we'll go through each section. Next slide. So for grant experience, we're looking for the applicant's experience in working with the qualified populations. Just a little note here, if you have previously worked with some of the qualified populations, but not all, just, include in your narrative answer that you will be serving the qualified populations. Let us know what you've done before and what you'll do with this program. Developing and implementing relevant program systems and services, managing basic organizational operations, including sound financial management and accounting systems, timely resolution of monitoring findings, regular and timely drawdowns of funding. We want to make sure we hit our targets and we expend the funds on time. And accurate and timely submissions of required reporting, which we'll get to a little later in the presentation. Next slide, please. Housing experience. We're looking for the extent to which the applicant understands and utilizes a housing first approach, the applicant's ability to assist program participants to rapidly secure and maintain permanent housing that is safe, affordable, accessible, and acceptable to their needs. We want to make sure we aren't trying to place people very far away from the things that they attend regularly, such as school or jobs, things like that. And the extent to which the applicant has experience leveraging housing resources with housing subsidies and the applicant's relationship with the local housing authority. And we're also interested in learning more about the applicant's experience in utilizing a homeless management information system. Next slide, please. For housing navigation, we're looking for the applicant's experience and plan to recruit and retain property managers and identify available units using data and lessons learned. We're also looking for the applicant's knowledge and experience in supporting disabled program participants in securing accessible units. Next slide. So for our program participants, we're looking for our applicants' experience and knowledge in understanding the housing needs of individuals and families who meet the definition of the qualified populations within their community. The applicant's experience with quickly moving the qualified population into permanent housing and providing supportive services, supporting the qualified populations and obtaining other public assistance benefits and other resources within the community. As Jared mentioned, we want to partner with our community partners, right? We want to make sure that if there's already a job club through EDD or some other resource available in your community, that we're referring our participants over to that community partner with a warm handoff. And we want to include those with no income, current or past substance abuse, or criminal records. Again, this is a housing first program. So we're going to house people first and then support them with any additional needs that they have. Next slide, please. Participant safety. We want to know the extent of the applicant's knowledge and experience in ensuring the safety of program participants, including training their staff on planning and safety planning and HIPAA compliance, safety planning for disasters, and for program participants who are fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or human trafficking. And we want to ensure the privacy of the program participants, including keeping personally identifiable information secure. Next slide, please. This program will use a trauma-informed, victim-centered approach. So we want to look at the extent of an applicant to demonstrate emphasizing program participants' strengths through strength-based coaching, questionnaires and assessment tools that include strength-based measures, and case plans that include assessments of program participants' strengths and work towards goals and aspirations of the participant. Again, this case plan should be driven by the participant. We should support the path that they want to go through while still providing advice and options. So this should be centered on cultural responsiveness and inclusivity, providing opportunities for connection for program participants, and offering support for parenting. Next slide, please. The applicant's experience and capacity to rapidly implement HPSP and record and report timely is vital. We want to make sure that the timeliness factor is there in the application. Next slide. So the financial component, the applicant's experience, the capacity with financial components. So having a functional accounting system that is in line with the generally accepted accounting principles, the applicant's proposed budget for HPSP, and the applicant's financial experience and knowledge in providing rapid rehousing programs or similar programs. Next slide, please. So the projected impact, and this is pretty important. We're looking at what is this program going to lead to, right? Households exiting to permanent housing, individuals who will increase their income during HPSP, individuals who will increase non-employment cash income through the program. So anyone that we're referring for public assistance programs that maybe aren't able to work. Individuals who improve skills and or education during the program enrollment, and the applicant's understanding of the statewide housing plan to address homelessness, how HPSP will align and support the statewide housing plan. Next slide, please. Equity factors. It's very important to our department that we have equity within our programs. So we're looking for the applicant's knowledge of equity and ability to ensure HPSP participants will receive services free from discrimination. The applicant's effort to provide employment opportunities and professional development to individuals with lived experience of homelessness, and the applicant's knowledge and experience in reviewing and analyzing policies and procedures with an equity lens, as well as supporting those with physical, sensory, or psychiatric disabilities with accessible services. Next slide, please. Other program factors. So the applicant's ability to ensure HPSP participants will receive only the services needed to ensure there's no duplication of services or assistance in the use of HPSP funds. There are a few caveats here, but basically, if someone is receiving rapid rehousing services in another program, they would not be eligible to HPSP. If they're receiving a specific service that is also covered by HPSP, we can still support them. We would just not provide services that they're already receiving from another entity. And the policies and procedures the applicant will use for HPSP. In this program, we've written the template policies and procedures. We do ask in the application for applicants to complete sections with their own office policies and practices. However, again, the template's already there. You do not have to rewrite the entire policies and procedures, so that is a big bonus. Next slide, please. So outreach, engagement, and advocacy. The applicant's knowledge and experience with marketing strategies and outreach activities that ensure all persons experiencing homelessness or housing instability are reached. Informing program participants of their rights and remedies available under federal, state, and local fair housing and civil rights laws. Reporting conditions or actions that impede fair housing choice for program participants. Obtaining feedback from program participants, whether that's through surveys or exit interviews, things such as that. Identifying barriers to to participation faced by persons of different races and ethnicities, particularly those overrepresented in the local homelessness population, and the actions taken to eliminate identified barriers. Next slide, please. And I'm going to pass this back over to Cheryl for application documents.
Okay, the next slide, please. So for the application documents, all applicants must submit the documents listed in our addendum on or before the application deadline into our neighborly software system. For nonprofit organizational documents, that will include the organizational chart, your articles of incorporation, the bylaws and any amendments to the bylaws, certificate of amendment to articles of incorporation, if applicable, restated articles, if applicable, and statement of information, and certificate of good standing certified by the California Secretary of State. Next slide. So before we move on to the award process, I believe Kelly would like to just talk a little bit about the sample budget, which is an application document, and the policies and procedures manual, and what that both of those documents entail and where to find them. So, Kelly.
Thank you, Cheryl. Let me just pull that up. All right. So this is the NOFA, and this is our sample budget that we have listed. Part of the application process is to provide your sample budget of how you intend to spend the HPSP funds. So we would just ask that you download this from the Neighborly software application and then upload it again with your information. The next thing that I wanted to look at was the policies and procedures. This is at the very end of the NOFA, and it gives you all of the information that we have in our policies and procedures. We do ask that you also download this and then fill in. There are specific sections that we ask for your office practices, and you're also welcome to provide additional information in any section that you would like. Once grantees are selected, or once applicants are selected and become subrecipients, we will have this chart filled out with HCD contacts and then our subrecipient or grantees contacts. There are definitions of some of the terms and a complete explanation or definition of the qualified populations. As you can see, we wrote the basic headers for our PowerPoint presentation, but this definition is quite lengthy, which is great because it includes, more than it excludes. The policies and procedures also includes a list of all available services and specific information about how housing case managers will access or provide those services. And we do talk about also other agencies where different services are provided, such as childcare. There are a few programs in the communities that we would look to first before providing any childcare through our program. And we do have maximum either amounts or time limits. These are the limits we have set. If there are situations that warrant an expansion of that could potentially happen, we would just need to have that staffed between our agency and yours. And when I am saying staffed, that's just where we look at a case and we determine what is needed going forward and provide support and advice for the housing case manager. As you can see, every service is listed with the additional information. Sorry for the long scroll. I'm just trying to get through these services. And here we are at the allowable expenses. This document gives, a very good explanation of how we expect things to work with allowable expenses, what documents are needed, and things such as that. There are quite a few, as Jared listed, financial expenses that are covered through the program. All right, confidentiality, of course, is very important. So there is a lengthy section on that. We have also information on referrals to community partners, best practices, the initial evaluation process or eligibility determination by the housing case manager for our participants, what to do when there's missed meetings, assessments, rental unit inspections. And now for these, we're not looking for someone to come in and verify that everything is completely stable and blah, 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 all of that. It's really more, is this unit going to fit the needs of the participant? Are there any serious safety concerns that maybe there needs to be some communication with the landlord to have things fixed that are obvious? And then also making sure that the location fits the needs of the household being served. So we talk about meetings and home visits. Again, we go into case staffings and what that looks like. Rent subsidies, how to calculate those rent subsidies, what happens when a participant needs an alteration due to an unforeseen circumstance. We also talk about what is an unforeseen circumstance and what is not. We outline the warm handoff and emergency transfers through VAWA, exiting a case, exit interview, and a decision review. So if a program participant disagrees with a decision, there is a process for review of that decision. Roles of the housing case manager and responsibilities, the housing case plan, housing navigator roles and responsibilities, workshops. And by workshops here, we mean workshops for life skills, budgeting. So there is a variety, and we do anticipate adding more as well. Housing vouchers, what those look like for our program, and also communications with the Public Housing Authority to help support our participants in obtaining them. What our waiting list structure looks like. Basically, it's a first come, first serve. We will not be using the coordinated entry system for our participants, as we do serve some of the at-risk populations that are still housed, and those participants aren't served through every coordinated entry system. We talk about what good cause is and how to handle participant case records, fair housing rules, administration and program monitoring, monthly reporting, annual review, what we expect from the Homeless Management Information System, or HMIS entries, information about VAWA, and information about fraud. Thank you.
Okay, continuing on to the award process. Next slide. So once we do the scoring for all the applications, we'll send out the initial score letters out with all the details of the scores, how we came to that conclusion, and determine, what score each participant received. You'll have a chance to, of course, dispute that or appeal it if need be. But yeah, those letters will have a complete detail over how we came to that scoring. Once that process is finished, we will move on and recommend awards for approval. The award letters will be sent out to successful applicants, and we anticipate all awards out by July 2024. So applicants that must notify the department of any changes to their program made after the application submission. If there are significant changes to the program after submission or scoring, we may have to reevaluate the program's threshold, eligibility, and scoring. So just be aware of that. Next slide. Program operations. I'm passing the baton again.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. I will be discussing some of the program operations for the Housing Plus Support Program. Next slide, please. So oversight of the HPSP program. Some of the oversight is we would like some ongoing monitoring of the program performance using data submitted by our subrecipients. There will be ongoing training on program information and activities, performance monitoring, and data collection. And we will have targeted technical assistance for communities facing barriers in spending some of the funds, the HPSP funds, and serving the participants. For financial management, subrecipients must follow the OMB cost principles and GAAP. Allowable costs must comply with the HPSP policies and procedures, which Kelly previously showed. All eligible costs incurred after the HPSP award letter date are reimbursable after the standard agreement execution. And funds requiring reimbursement shall not be expended prior to the award letter date. Next slide, please. And for program records, some subrecipients must maintain sufficient program records to determine whether HPSP requirements have been met or are being met. Maintain records documenting compliance with the 10% limitation on the administrative funds. Also, of course, maintain confidentiality of all qualifying households, and maintain records in accordance with the following governmental code. Program administration records. Subrecipients must maintain records demonstrating compliance in accordance with the Home ARP Notice CPD 2110. So for reporting and performance, subrecipients must submit monthly reports through the Neighborly System portal by the 20th of each month. And subrecipients must also provide participant level data quarterly through the Neighborly portal. And this will include race and ethnicity, household size, types, and the households assisted. Reporting and performance continued. Subrecipients will complete an annual evaluation of the HPSP of their HPSP program after the completion of each fiscal year, and performance reviews will be completed and determine subrecipients' compliance of the use of funds and the program responsibilities. Great, and that will conclude the program operations. I will go ahead and pass it on. Thank you.
Back to me again. We are going to cover the application navigation and submittal process in our neighborly software system. Next slide. So from the HCD webpage, right there at the top, you can see you're going to click on the grants and funding tab. And from that tab, it'll list all the programs. You're going to want to go to programs active and click on the home American Rescue Plan. And then when you get to that portion of it, you're going to click on apply now. Next slide. When you get to apply now, it's going to take you to this page here, and where the arrow is at the bottom, you'll have those 4 choices. You're going to want to go to HPSP neighborly portal and click on that. Next slide. So this is our neighborly system is new. We're using that for our grants and management for this program. It's pretty user friendly, so we don't anticipate there being any problems with any that, because it is a new program. So once you get to this page here, you'll need to register as a new user. So you'll click register right there. Next slide. Once you are registered, you can begin the application by selecting Start Application. And I believe you'll have 2 choices there. It'll have the rental housing program and Housing Plus Support. So you'll just go to Housing Plus Support and click on Start Application. Next slide. You're going to want to make note of your application ID number at the top of this screen here, because this is the number that will connect you and refer you to the application that you filled out until if you become if you're awarded funds, then we'll obviously switch to a contract number, but keep note of your application ID number right there. Once you do that, you'll want to go where the arrow is, click here to continue. Next slide. So for if you want additional people to be able to access the application and fill in different parts of the application aside from yourself, you can go to where it says view users, and they can put in their email address right there and add a user, and this will include and you can use more than one, however many you want to be able to access the application. They just need an email address and register as you did. They'll become a user and be able to access and answer different sections of the application. Next slide. The program overview slide is it's an important slide. It's gonna tell you, as you can see, it's gonna talk about the program a little bit. It's gonna go into a little bit more detail about, what each section is and what's expected, a threshold, grant experience, and you're gonna navigate through each one of these sections until you get to the end of the application where you are going to submit it. But make sure that you do read the program overview slide and understand that in conjunction with the NOFA, you'll need these side by side to be able to complete the application, because you'll be referring back to the NOFA at different times for explanations, or to read about maybe the more extensive description of scoring or whatnot. So again, this is an important page to read through before you begin. Next slide. So as you go through each one of the sections, you can select either save or complete and continue. You're going to want to always hit save. With save, you can go back if you don't have a question answered. You can go back and re-answer. But once you complete a section, you've answered all the questions, you're happy with that, you're going to want to click complete and continue, and it'll kind of put a check mark in that section that you're done, and you can move on. But if you need to go back, again, save. But I just my own opinion is it's just best just to save through each section whether or not you're going to complete it right, then always save it. Next slide. So with our minimum requirements, we don't expect anybody to not make it through threshold. It's just, as Kelly pointed out, they're basic, completed on time. Make sure you submit your application by the deadline, and just follow those pretty much those simple the requirements for our minimum. For our threshold. So if you don't, excuse me, if you answer a question no, or for some reason you're going to get this stop sign right here, requirement not met, meaning that this is what you've answered no, you haven't met the requirement. If you think you did meet the requirement and you have an explanation for that, there's a place to upload. But like I said, we don't expect the stop sign to come up too often. But if it does, you can continue on with the application, but it will not guarantee that you will be awarded funds. Next slide. So once you've completed everything, you've completed all the sections, and you've hit complete and save, you've got that green check mark, and you haven't gotten it, because if you get to the end of a section, it won't let you move forward. It won't let you go to the next one unless you have completed it and got that green check mark. But once that is all finished, you're going to get to this last page and electronically sign after you check the boxes there that you understand any false statements, you understand criminal offense for knowingly giving us false information, and all documents are public records, subject to public records laws. You'll sign that. And also I want to mention that once you've completed it, completed the application, and you have submitted it, maybe later on you realize that you didn't put the right answer, or you want to change something, and the application deadline has not passed, you can request to reopen the application, and you can get in touch with HPSP staff, and we can reopen. Again, that's got to be before the application deadline, and HPSP staff has to be the one to reopen it so that you can update something or fix something. But if the application deadline has passed, it's a done deal. What you submitted is what we'll be looking at. And once we have gotten all those applications in, we will start to look at the minimum requirements, and start scoring and move those highest scored applications to recommend for funding. Next slide. Okay, just that I've already mentioned this, but again, you are going to want to save off in the application just to make sure you don't lose anything. And I believe if you have it on a page and it doesn't detect any movement, there hasn't been any activity on that page after a certain amount of time, you'll lose what you've already put on that page. So again, it's important to save often. And you can make changes to the application again, unless the application deadline has passed. We can open that. Next slide. For assistance, if you have a assistant, if you need help with the actual application, then in Neighborly, in this system, they've got this great little help box down here that you can click on and ask questions. If you have a program related question, you don't understand a question, or you want to get some clarification, you can contact the HPSP team at the email address right there. And again, if it's for Neighborly, you're going to want to go to their little portal right here and click on this for help. We can also help you with Neighborly questions if you have them, but maybe it's just an error password account, something like that. You'll want to go directly to their help portal right there. Next slide. And that concludes our Neighborly application and submittal section. We are going to open it up for some Q&A, and I will send it back to Kelly for opening that forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. So if you have any questions that you would like to ask verbally, please raise your hand and our host, admin host, will unmute you. Please don't hesitate to ask your questions. We want to make sure that we are doing a good job of spreading the information and making sure that it's clarified.
Hi, Yolanda. Go ahead with your question.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. This is a great presentation. My question is, I can't recall the slide, but something about out of the settlement area. I'm not sure if that was the word or not. What could you clarify that when you say out of the settlement area? And I'm not sure if that's the word. It was an S, but
Yes,
something.
Yolanda. Thank you for the question. So it's the service area. And really, we're just trying to make sure that we are heavily primarily serving the eligible jurisdictions. And these are the jurisdictions that did not receive funding directly from the federal government for home ARP. And I just want to also clarify that the entity applying determines their own service area. That means if you're in a county that has some cities that are in an eligible jurisdiction and some that are not, you would not be required to service the whole county, just the areas you normally service, and those must be heavily primarily in the eligible jurisdictions. Does that answer your question, Yolanda?
I think it does, but I'm going to just be specific where we're located. So we're located in South Los Angeles. Is that an eligible area?
That is a great question. Can I take the screen, please? So there are so many areas that it is really difficult to remember off the top of my head, which ones are eligible and which ones are not. So I would like to point out, sorry everyone for the scroll, I should have got there before I turned on my screen, but we do list all of the eligible jurisdictions. And so Los Angeles, there is a list right here. I'm not sure if you can see this. I know it's kind of small. Let me see if I can increase that. Okay. So in Los Angeles, there are quite a few cities that are eligible. The county of Los Angeles as a whole did receive funding from Home ARP, but these specific cities apparently aren't benefiting from that, which is why they're eligible jurisdictions for us.
Okay, so let me make sure that I'm clear. So only these particular areas are eligible.
Correct.
Okay, so we do serve the Carson area. We do serve the Lakewood area. Okay, so our particular application needs to focus on this particular area or those areas that we serve, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you so much. That clarifies a lot. I appreciate it.
No problem. You're welcome.
Okay, next we have Rodrigo. Rodrigo, I believe you're muted. Okay, for now, I'm going to move on to the next. So just give 1 second here. Rodrigo, if you still like to request or ask a question, just leave your hand raised, okay? And oh, someone lowered their hands, so. Rodrigo, are you there? Okay, we'll move to the next question then. David, go ahead.
Hi, I actually have a couple of questions. One, if the award is granted in July, per the application, is this a 5-year funding award?
Yes.
Okay. Then the second question is, when you talked about the admin charges, so there's a couple of different ways of looking at that. One is direct charges for things such as rent, communication, and insurance that are associated with delivering the program. And then there is the agency admin, in our case would be the 10% de minimis rate, which would include all of the accounting services, the supervision of all of the programs, the fidelity, making sure that we're doing everything according to the regulations as an agency. It's not specific to the program. So is that 10% indirect cost rate an acceptable part of the budget application?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. We'll move back to Rodrigo. Just give me one moment. Go ahead, Rodrigo. You can unmute. Okay. I have you on here twice, Rodrigo. I'm going to try the other. Okay. Can you unmute?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, I couldn't get unmuted. At the beginning, you indicated that services must follow the client and must not be tied to a specific building. Does this mean, in essence, that we try to place clients in the housing of their choice, not necessarily in housing that maybe we own or something to that effect? But does it also mean that we've got to provide services out in the field?
So that's a good question. If you have housing available and participants choose to be housed in that housing, that's acceptable. However, it cannot be required that that's the only place they can be housed. So they would have to be able to select their own housing in another apartment or home of any type of unit, but they cannot be forced into a specific building.
Okay,
Does that clarify?
and then related to that is, so if we have housing units that we own, can we use the rental assistance to cover the rent for those units?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we have Alexandria. Go ahead, Alexandria.
Unmute. Sorry, I was just wondering, looking at the eligibility list here, some of the counties say like Humboldt, like mine specifically says Humboldt County, then Humboldt County underneath, and then some cities. So does that mean that all of Humboldt County is eligible, or just those specific cities? Because like under Los Angeles, it doesn't have Los Angeles County again, but others do.
Correct. So if it indicates that a county is eligible, then that indicates that they did not receive that funding directly. However, some cities within a county may have obtained funding without the county obtaining it. So if your city is listed or if you're within that county, you're within an eligible jurisdiction.
Okay, it's just confusing. That's all.
It is a little confusing. That was just the best way we can explain it, but I
Right.
think Jason has more to add.
Yeah, it is a little bit confusing. So essentially, if the county is listed twice on the chart, then the whole county is eligible. in addition to
Those
the cities.
specific cities. But if the whole county is eligible, then every city within the county would be eligible.
That is correct.
So why not just put Humboldt County?
We do list Humboldt County.
No, I know, but then you add you add like 4 or 5 main cities. So I'm just, for everybody, like,
Right,
you
for
don't have
just
to
for
write.
clarity, for the purposes, the entirety of Humboldt County is eligible.
Eligible. Yeah,
Correct.
thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, next we have Amy.
Okay, I think you've answered this first question before, but I just want to hear it once more. The 10% administrative is on the total award, not just on the non-rental assistance components, correct?
Correct. It's on the total award grant.
Okay. Which is lovely, and thank you. Not that we don't want to move as much money as we can toward the rental assistance, but you have to keep the doors open. Second question, if we meet an eligible client in an eligible area, we're doing service delivery in one of the spots named, but they want to move out of the area, will the services follow the client there? Can we help set them up? Because sometimes they want to live somewhere cheaper, or they're trying to get away from something bad. Maybe there's, a problem person in their life. So yes. Oh, no, that's totally okay.
Yes, the answer is yes. We want to support the person. So what we would do is, if they are trying to move to an area where we have another HPSP program running, then we would try to, transfer them over to that program. If they're trying to go to an area within California that is not covered by an HPSP program, then we would do as much support as possible. If it's unreasonable distance for a case manager to travel,
then I think we would be talking about situations where simply having the money for the rental would probably solve 90% of problems, where maybe they had family and there was employment waiting for them. So the wraparound services might be less of an issue, as long as we could help them get housed, even if it's outside of the service area where we met them. If that's the healthy, great choice, and the only difference is that money, then yay. Okay, one last question. It's a 5-year award, but if we front load it, because we know there's a lot of demand for the services, and spend way more of the money in years 1 and 2, we certainly have reporting obligations and stuff, but is there any reason? I mean, we can just help more people faster, and then if they self-stabilize, great. Why would I want to drag it over 5 years and make somebody wait to be in our 3rd or 4th or 5th year? Is it okay to front load the budget?
So in regards to the budget, that's kind of a guideline and really more of a minimum. We want to make sure at least 20% is spent in the first year. And we do realize that maybe more than that will be spent, because there will be purchases of like a vehicle for the housing case manager, laptop, higher priced expenses. So if it's over that, yes, that's fine. Now, we want to make sure that we're providing quality over quantity.
Right.
So if, we want to make sure that our housing case managers aren't serving more than 25 participants at a time, because they need to be able to provide holistic services. So the answer is yes, you can spend more in the budget. We just want to make sure we're still hitting that quality mark.
Well, I don't know if you guys were involved in setting this up, but may I say that this seems like a very efficient way to design this so that people would be helped. We're totally with you on the participants, the caseloads being managed, but how wonderful if we can, front load with staff and the rental assistance. I think we could make a big difference pretty quick. And I'm not shortcutting, but we all know what the issues are. It's just hard to find affordable housing. So anything that can help. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to put my hand down. Oh, you put my hand down. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
All right. Next we have Julie Clemens, and Julie did have a question in the Q&A. So if before I put her unmute her, could you respond to this? In her question, she said, could you also clarify, does the nonprofit have to be Chido.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. And the nonprofit does not have to be a CHODO.
Wonderful. The second part of my question is about indirect rates. When those of us who may have negotiated indirect rates with HUD, are we eligible to utilize that rate?
As far as the market
Administrative rate.
right?
The
I'm sorry.
administrative rate.
Yes, if the rate is consistent with the cost allocation plan, that you have established with HUD, it falls under an eligible rate for the program.
Thank you.
There's still time. Is there anyone else who has any questions? Please just raise your hand. Okay, I see Tillman, I'll go ahead and unmute you. If you can unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, the documentation I have says that not-for-profits are eligible to apply for this program, but yet you described it, you said not-for-profits only can apply. Can you clarify?
Yes, this program is eligible to nonprofit organizations.
What about for-profits?
It is not eligible for for-profits.
Not eligible. Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Annette Patterson. Go ahead, Annette, if you can unmute. There you go.
Good morning. Thank you. CHODA, I don't know what that term is. Can somebody tell me what that is?
So that's a term for nonprofits organizations in the HOME program, which is a legacy HUD program. The HOME ARP program is I would say, a spinoff, a new version of the HOME program. And so in the requirements, they removed the term CHODO from our rules and regulations. So I would say for purposes of this program, HOME ARP, it's a non-issue. It's not a factor at all in the Housing Plus Support program.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further, Annette?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Tillman, I see your hand is raised again. Is there something further? You can unmute yourself.
No, that was it for me.
Okay. All right, and we're going to move on. And next we have Amy Price.
Do you know, and if it was in the NOFA, forgive me, I didn't see it on the first pass. Will you consider 2 awards to the same area? Obviously, in a perfect world, we're all in a coalition and know what everyone's doing, but it's not always a perfect world.
That's a good question. So we could award multiple grants in regions 1 and regions 3, but in the other regions, the funding breakdown ended up to where it was really only enough to support one program. So it depends on which region you're in. And then we really wouldn't want to put 2 of the same program in the same city. So we'll end up having to see how that all plays out. But a program could request the full funding in region 1 or region 3 and could potentially be granted that.
Okay, so I'm gonna scroll down to the regions because I don't have those in mind. Y'all don't have any mechanism to notify us if there's interest, I mean, even just in this webinar from the same area, or is there a list of participants somewhere that will appear? I mean, that would speed along me finding anybody else in the region and connecting with them to see if we could make sure we're working, together and not duplicating services.
The issue with that would be that we don't know who all is going to apply until the applications have closed and we have everybody in.
Fair enough. Is there a list of participants in this webinar anywhere?
I don't think there is that's available, to the public. Jason, do you have additional information to share on that?
No, we don't typically. We
Totally
don't.
understood. I'm not trying to be shady. I'm trying to be
Yeah,
effective.
no, we don't typically post the recipients, or excuse me, the participants, of the webinar.
All good. I'll reach out through the coalition. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Okay, before I move on with the attendees list, there is, oh, what happened to it here? There was a question from Marina. Marina, did you want to ask that live? You want to raise your hand? No? Okay. Well, the question that was in here was in our Q&A was, I have multiple assisted living facilities in LA and Ventura. Could we be a resource or are we eligible?
So because of the fact that it is a facility and it's one location, if the funding is for that specifically, the answer would be no, you would not be eligible. If you're asking, could you run this program and support people with, market housing, then the answer would be yes, if you are a nonprofit and you are willing to serve all of our qualified populations.
Thank you, Kelly. Okay, we're going to go back to our attendees list, and next we have David Frantz.
Hi. Kelly, that was a great answer, by the way. Yeah, very clear. Our organization is in Sonoma County. We're part of the Bay Area region. We are an individual CBO, but have participated in many rapid rehousing type programs through our COC. Is this exclusive to the individual nonprofit organizations, or would a COC be the applicant and then we be subs?
No, we're eliminating the sub process. And so you would not have to go through a COC. You would apply directly through your nonprofit.
Okay, thank you for that. Is it possible though that our COC could apply?
No, it would have to be a nonprofit organization.
Perfect. Thank you. Excellent.
Thank you, David. And we have next a question from Mary Culver. Go ahead, Mary.
Good morning, and thank you guys for this wonderful presentation. I had a quick question. You guys did state that we did not have to have our referrals from the COC. So I just wanted to confirm that we are not also obligated to follow fair market rents.
There are rules by HUD on the rent amounts. So we do have to follow the HUD rules on that. But you are correct. We will not be going through the COC. I do want to clarify, though, that we want to make sure the COC is aware of the program and can indirectly refer participants. That is to let them know about the program if they are on a coordinated entry list or if they come across an agency that's within the continuum of care. We would want them to at least understand the basics of the program and be able to indirectly refer people.
Right. And then I respect that, because we would still be working with our COC for referrals, trying to just serve as many of the population as we possibly could on this grant. Our rents are just exorbitant right now compared to fair market rents. And on another HUD grant that we have is leasing dollars, so we don't qualify for rent reasonableness. So I just wanted to make sure that we would still be able to, kind of work with individuals under at least the minimum of rent reasonableness if we don't have to adhere to the exact dollar of the FMR.
That's a great question. We do also have the opportunity for a waiver request. That's a process and it takes some time, but we can follow the rent reasonableness.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. So right now we're going to pop over into the Q&A, and I wanted to ask our panelists live questions here. And the first question is, are applicants required to provide services out in the field to persons experiencing homelessness?
The answer is yes. That's one of the reasons that the program allows for a vehicle for the housing case manager, laptops, things like that, is we want to meet people where they are. If someone is in a homeless situation, it may be very difficult for them to get to a specific location. So we do want to go out, meet them in the public, and we also expect home visits to occur. So we do expect participants to be helped out in the field and not in an office.
Great, thank you for that answer, Kelly. And the second question we have from an anonymous attendee. We are a nonprofit who serves victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. This program would be amazingly beneficial to the population we serve, and they would be qualifying. But opening to the other qualifying populations, regardless of their victim status, would be outside our scope. Any suggestions for that?
So that is a choice that your agency would have to make. Either you would need to open up to the other qualifying populations. We do have an extensive technical assistance plan that we will be supporting our subrecipients throughout the life of the program. So we can provide additional support with the other populations. We cannot limit our program to one specific qualifying population, unfortunately, for that. But we want to make sure we are serving all of the qualified populations.
Wonderful. Thank you for that answer. Are there any further questions from our attendees? Thank you so much for asking your questions live. It helps everyone that's attending this workshop. If there's any more questions, we'll keep it open for a couple more minutes. And you can also drop your questions in the Q&A. I can ask those out loud so that everyone can hear them. So we'll just give it a couple more minutes to 10:40. And then if we don't have any questions at 10:40, our panelists will continue on. Again, just raise your hand or drop a question in the Q&A. Oh, okay, Yolanda. Hold on one moment. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I think you answered this, but I had the phone ringing and I didn't hear the response. For the rental subsidies and financial assistance, does this come out of the grant, or is that a separate funding pot?
It does come out of the grant.
Okay. And is there an expected or desired percentage of the grant that we would want to allocate for the rental assistance?
That is a great question. If you look at the sample budget, we do kind of have a breakdown. Let me see if I can pull that up for you real quick. Of kind of it's kind of a hint of what we're aiming for. So let me share that with you real quick.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so this is kind of big, but let me reduce it a little bit. Okay, so we're really hoping, this is kind of where we're looking at it. We would like for the case management services and these things that fall underneath it to be approximately 25% of the entire budget without the administration costs. This is just for the grant amount, not the additional 10%. And then we would like approximately 65% to fall under all of the financial assistance. We really want to make sure we're supporting program participants completely and giving them that quality of services. And then for the other housing support assistance, we're looking at approximately 10% as the goal. And that's because most of these services that we have listed here, we will refer people out for those services to other community partners. And then, of course, we have the additional 10%, and that would be for the administrative activities.
Excellent. That is extremely helpful. Thank you so much, Kelly.
You're welcome, Yolanda.
Thank you, Yolanda. And we do have a question or a couple more questions that were dropped into the Q&A. The first question here is, could two nonprofits apply in a joint application?
That's a great question. The answer is technically yes. We would be interested in learning how that relationship would work and what the responsibilities of each agency would be. We would like that to be addressed in the narrative answers of the application.
Okay, great. I hope for the person who questioned, questioned that it answered your question. There was a question from Ariana. Did you want to go ahead and ask that live? If you do, I can open it up. I just see it. I saw it drop off the Q&A.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I was just wanting to know if there would be a recording of this that we can refer back to. I've had to pop in and out and I've missed parts.
Great question. Yes, we will have a recording available on our website. And I believe that it takes about a week for us to get that up.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ariana.
Okay, that's it that we see in the Q&A, and no further hands are raised. And again, you all are free to throw something in there or raise your hands. And Kelly and Jason or Jared can answer those. I'll let you the panel know. Back to you, panel.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and close this session. If you have additional questions that you think of, in the coming weeks, please let us know through our HPSP inbox. That's hpsp@hcd.ca.gov. And if you're interested in discussing your entity more thoroughly prior to submitting your application, please contact us through that email box with the subject of consultation request. And if there are no other questions, we're going to go ahead and close out this session. Thank you all for attending.